Fire Emblem's origins in the West begin in 2003, when the 7th game in the series, Fire Emblem, The Blazing Blade, or just Fire Emblem here, washed ashore on the Game Boy Advance, following the popularity of Smash Bros. Melee inclusion of Marth and Roy. 6 previous titles spanning 3 consoles and 13 years of the franchise were just inaccessible to a Western audience. In 2008, the West received a DS remake of the very first game in the series, Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, while 2017 marked the launch of the second remake for the West, this time for Fire Emblem Gaiden, known as the 3DS title Fire Emblem Echoes: Shadows of Valentia. However, the original games themselves had yet to be localized. It is odd to receive remakes of games you haven't been able to legally purchase and play yet. That is until December 4th, 2020, where the 1990 Famicom game that started it all, Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, was finally localized for the Nintendo Switch. In this review, we talk about FE1 and specifically the Switch port that garners unique consideration in this modern day context. I'll state outright that I love this series, and it is important to understand this perspective as we wade into the review. I was very excited to experience where it all began, warts and all. And the warts are unmistakable, but considering the era, series creator Sozo Kaga's ability to establish such a compelling core and strategic design on the Famicom that even 30 years later it still shines through. The series' appeal is instantly recognizable, and the trail this original game would blaze in the genre does not come as a surprise. Now, some may ask why even play this game when a remake exists on the DS in Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon. These two games are different experiences, as unsurprisingly the series changed a lot in the 20 years separating those titles. Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light demonstrates a few of the crucial tenets of design that make up its original appeal. First of those is permadeath. Intelligent Systems' first standalone Famicom project was the strategy game Famicom Wars. A similar structure to Advance Wars today. The combat plays out with indistinct, replenishable soldiers and artillery. When iterating on the strategy genre, implementing fewer, more distinct, irreplaceable units, as well as going to a fantasy genre, was to create a more personal relationship between player and character. This is evident throughout the series' history and unmistakable in FE1 as well. You quickly adapt to units' abilities, skills, strengths, weaknesses, and to a lesser degree, personality. Having an intimate knowledge of each character is crucial for their survival. Each character has a playstyle based on their stat growths and proficiencies, which helps build a personality outside of the one the narrative gives them. The bet pays off, as I believe even in the series' infancy, permadeath achieves what it is there to do. The game can be more intimidating because of this, however, as you can discover in our beginner's guide, this first outing is much easier and generous than many future entries, especially with the quality of life features present in the Switch release. The second tenet of Fire Emblem is class promotion, one of the many different iterations of the concept, which was becoming popular in the JRPG zeitgeist at the time. Dragon Quest III and later Final Fantasy III inspired many future series to implement their own flavor of class-changing systems. Fire Emblems is but one example of this, and promotion, while severely limited in FE1 compared to later entries, creates a compelling growth structure. There isn't as much freedom in FE1, as only 6 classes can promote, but the vast array of characters one can use throughout their journey bolsters the game's replayability, as well as the aforementioned affinity the player gains with certain units. Even within, at best, skeletal hero's journey narrative, this mechanical conceit makes up for a lot, as a lot of satisfaction comes from watching your characters grow in strength and ability. I played through the game twice for the purpose of this review, and prioritizing different characters' growth and class promotion across playthroughs was a highlight of my experience. The third tenet, and obviously not the last, fill in the blank on what the rest would be, but I'd say it would be the strategic combat. It differs from the Dragon Quests and Final Fantasies I previously mentioned. The strategy plays out between combat encounters, not during. Weapon choices, positioning, stat buffs, etc. all take place prior to the encounter. There are no random encounters though. You set up the parameters of battle and let your units and the RNG play out. Moving throughout the map to achieve subsidiary goals are always being weighed against your unit's vulnerability when doing so. The turn-based aspects of Fire Emblem are not static, as exploration and combat are both tied to this principle, and again, There are some limitations to this in the first game, but it is there, even in the very beginning. The standalone Switch release does a lot to make the game playable. I know that sounds pretty harsh when following all this praise from earlier, but there are some unfortunate realities that must be reckoned with. The game runs entirely too slow. Map traversal, dialogue, and most egregiously battle animations are absolutely glacial. Without the speed up options in the new release, this review might not have been possible. Unfortunately, Nintendo's emulation, like many unofficial ones, speeds up the music when doing this. I'm not sure if there's an easy solution to this, but the sped up music was quite grating after a while that I had to turn it off completely, which caused some weird feedback through the speakers. I don't know if anyone else experienced that. Now, this is not ideal, as some of Yuka Tsujioko's few but iconic compositions are still a joy to hear, but only at normal speed, which is an unacceptable option past the first hour or so. We also have a turn-based rewind function, which is an extension of design choices like Divine Pulse or Mila's Turn Wheel in the series' most recent entries. These are features not present even in NSO Japan's version of the game. Having a fleshed out and fine-tuned localization is quite a relief, as the fan translations up to this point were admirable, but definitely lacking. The team has added a lot to sharpen the narrative and characters and small, concise changes to the game script. An investment in localization toward legacy content like this from Nintendo is tantalizing. There's so many classic great games in the Fire Emblem franchise alone that are inaccessible for the majority of their Western fans. Hopefully, this sets a new precedent moving forward. I'm a sucker for this 8-bit aesthetic and the suspect character portrait's lovable charm and personality. The over-reliance on the color green as both grass and floor tiles would be my biggest graphical gripe. Battle scenes are also a bit lackluster, especially because even the sequel Gaiden on the same hardware was able to at least create a wider array of unique attack animations. The battles are not easily missed when one speeds up the game, save for a few of the major encounters. No background and simple and repetitive animations do not do the future of the series justice. This lack of graphical flair is not just an aesthetic complaint, but a mechanical one as well. Just look at the battle information. A bunch of weird bars. There really isn't any concrete information for the player here, the UI being almost useless in deciphering inexact amounts of defense, HP, and accuracy. NES RPGs are often too vague on important information, and everyone is among the worst of them. There are so many important stats that are left out of the game, like weapon weight, attack speed, as well as all these silly battle bars. As the series develops and becomes highly informative, this is an archaic element I found more difficult to look past. The maps are not too sophisticated either, nor are the enemy design, and neither are the mission objectives. Outside of Marth, no one really gets unique sprites on the battlefield. The game really revolves around him. It's all about getting our pantless prince Marth from A to B. Marth's importance is both a charm and a curse. Having Marth be responsible for every major interaction, whether it be visiting villages, recruiting units, or seizing a castle, allows for a beginning player to ensure Marth as a competent and overpowered member of their army. Often the lords in Fire Emblem lose their luster near mid to end game, but Marth holds firm as one of the game's best units. However, this can cause certain maps to go on way too long. Waiting for Marth to gallivant across the map several times to recruit a character, then another one on the other side, visit a village, and then slowly make his way back to the castle is a bit nightmarish. Moment-to-moment pacing and everyone falls apart mid to late game. By far the biggest mechanical shortcoming is item management. There is no pre-mission menu to shuffle items between characters and the convoy. It must be done in-map when a convoy tile is in reach. While they are plentiful, this process is time-consuming. A unit can only hold 4 items, and the convoy, 40 or 50? Which means it is difficult to save items for the long haul. Now, a cautious first playthrough, like mine, would find this extremely frustrating, but rest assured, there are an abundance of good items and shops to go around, especially near endgame. Still, the time I've wasted at the end of a successful chapter with Marth waiting near a seize point, spending dozens of turns optimizing loadouts and clearing out space in my convoy, is mind-numbing. Worst of all, units you do not choose to bring along for a certain chapter result in their inventory being equally inaccessible. This might require you to restart an entire mission when you realize you don't have the item you need when you reach the boss. So that was the game review part, right? But I want to situate the game in its proper context, as what I'm reviewing is the 2020 Switch release specifically. Scoring a game like this is difficult because in 1990, these innovative tenets of Fire Emblem's core gameplay led to the series' initial success in Japan. At the time, the game perhaps would fare a bit better considering the landscape of console RPGs back on the Famicom. I'd be remiss without acknowledging the elephant in the room, and that is Nintendo's supposed limited release window, shackling this game to a 4-month availability. This release is a way to celebrate the Fire Emblem franchise's 30th anniversary, and apparently not a day past that. It is hard to reckon with that on one hand, and also adore the collector's edition I have and its better than usual quality and contents. I can't help but acknowledge the real care that went into preserving this title, even celebrating it, then paradoxically cast it back into the oblivion at the end of March. Especially considering this was a digital-only release. Unlike 3D All-Stars, there was no physical cartridge to alleviate preservation concerns in the future. There is no buying this game secondhand. And maybe Nintendo will reverse this decision or re-release the game in the near future, but as of now, it is quite a precarious position they are putting the consumer in, even if the game in question is under $10. I've come away with a lot of admiration of the work Shotokaga and Intelligent System put in to Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, and commend the fine job the localization team provided this release. So I think any Fire Emblem fan should be quick to pick this up, but if the business practices Nintendo has employed in and around this release make that a hard pill to swallow, I'd be lying if I said this game is a can't-miss experience. The warts can be frustrating, even though they do improve as you play through the game maybe a second time. I also want to reiterate, though, that the DS remake, Shadow Dragon, is a different game, experience, and marred with many of its own issues, some of them being more bothersome to me than the archaic aspects of FE1. I didn't really intend on falling back into the crowd, as I imagine I enjoyed this game far more than many who reviewed it. But I can't overlook both Nintendo's artificial scarcity as well as admitting to my personal, absolute adoration for the game's historical value, more so than the moment-to-moment experience at times. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed the review. Make sure to leave us a like, a comment, and subscribe, and if you got the game or plan on getting it, be sure to check out our guides right here on Turnstyle. We have a video that'll help you get started, as well as one that'll help you finish up the endgame if you're having trouble. Thanks for watching.